Hi, and welcome back. Today we're talking about human origins and adaptations, and it's a continuation of Chapter 1 of Anatomy and Physiology. Why study humans' origins and adaptations? Well, let's look at where humans came from. So it used to be thought that humans and other species were created by a supernatural phenomenon, and there are many cultures in the world that believed that. But when Darwin and other scientists of his time started to discover things like the earth is very old, that there are fossils, not all species survive, and they began to question that. And through careful observations and experiments, we now know that the theory of evolution is what contributes to all species alive today. Darwin wrote The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection and The Descent of Man much later, and he discusses human evolution and our relationship with other animals, to other animals. It changed our view of our origin, our nature, and our place in the universe, and a good understanding of our evolutionary history deepens our understanding of form and function. What evolution is, it's a change in genetic composition of a population from one generation to the next. That would be considered microevolution. When those genetic changes accumulate over hundreds or thousands of generations, that is known as macroevolutions, in which case you may end up with a new species over that much time. The couple of examples that are good to look at because they occur right now are the development of bacterial resistance to antibiotics and new strains of viruses. So let me show you what that looks like. But the mechanism of natural selection is such that some individuals have a hereditary advantage, an adaptation that enables them to survive, to produce more offspring. So in other words, they survive to reproductive age. All of your ancestors survived to reproductive age. Lucky for you and me. So if they pass those characteristics on, it brings about a genetic change in the population. In other words, individuals with those genes survive. Individuals without those genes do not. So the genetic composition of the subsequent population is different. The forces that favor some individuals over others are called selection pressures. And these are things like climate, disease, predators, lack of resources, lack of the ability to adapt to changes in the environment. So let me show you what I mean by evolution by natural selection when we're talking about bacteria. So bacteria, let's make a population of bacteria. Here they are here. Population of bacteria. And they have different kinds of genes. I'm just indicating genes by spots. This gene is different than all the other ones. So right now, in this population, this particular gene exists as 1 in 7. That is the frequency of that particular gene. And say antibiotics are applied. Now, it's not really natural selection because humans are applying the antibiotics for the most part, although in nature, antibiotics are naturally produced by such things as fungi. But say this antibiotic, it eliminates all of these bacteria, but not this one. And bacteria reproduce at a phenomenally huge rate. So there we've got offspring, more offspring, more offspring. And of these resultant offspring, oh, they all have this gene from their ancestor. They all have this gene from their ancestor. And they all have this gene from their ancestor. And now the frequency of this particular gene, the resistant gene, is 7 and 7. So through this short time period, it happens very, very fast with bacteria because they multiply so quickly. Now we have changed the frequency. That little diamond indicates changed the frequency of a gene. In this case, one particular gene, but many genes may change in frequency from generation to generation. So microevolution is a change from one generation to the next. You and I are products of microevolution because we're not exactly the same as our parents. Indeed, we got 23 chromosomes from mom, and we got 23 chromosomes from dad, and that's us, me. I have a brand new combination of chromosomes. Indeed, the probability of getting this exact 23 chromosomes from mom is 1 in 8 trillion. And the probability of getting those exact 23 chromosomes from dad, 1 in 8 trillion. The probability of these two combining, that particular egg and that particular sperm with that particular combination of chromosomes, we have to multiply those probabilities together, and the probability is 1 in 64 trillion. That is the probability of you being who you are, of you having that particular set of chromosomes. Well, if you've survived to reproduction, that means you have adaptations that are useful features. They help you to survive, like, for example, resistance, if you happen to be a bacteria, a resistance to antibiotics. There's many different kinds of adaptations that animals have. In this case, the beaver has ever-growing teeth. And it's an adaptation because the beaver eats wood, it grinds its teeth down, and if the teeth just stayed short and stumpy, it couldn't eat. So the adaptation of the beaver is ever-growing teeth. The polar bear has white fur. It helps it be camouflaged in the Arctic where it captures its prey. So the adaptation of the polar bear is white fur. Darwin studied finches on the Galapagos Islands. I was lucky enough to go there when I was doing my grad work, and I absolutely loved it. It was like following in Darwin's footsteps. It was really neat. And I saw some of these finches. So the Galapagos Islands are a fairly recent phenomenon, just 1.5 million years or so. And all of these finches here, these are all different species. But they are the descendants of one species. So their ancestor is a mainland species of finch. So that population of finches, the ancestor, went to the Galapagos Islands when it formed, and eventually evolved into many different species. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are shown here. And the reasons are there was competition for food. So these individuals did well with this kind of beak, eating leaves, and they started to look different than other individuals in the population. Indeed, they started to mate with each other because they were in the same environment. This individual has a large beak for cracking seeds. That's another source of food. No competitors there. So these individuals started to mate with each other, and the large beak was the result. And eventually, they isolated from the other individuals of other populations and became their own species. So another good reason to look at our historical, no, that's not what I want to say, historical, our evolutionary past, is that we have some organs and features that we don't even use. And you might wonder, why? Why do we have them? They are leftover remnants from our evolutionary past, from ancestors that we had a very long time ago. We still have some of those features, but they're not useful for our survival now, so we don't use them. One thing is the appendix. Another is wisdom teeth. Our ancestors were small vegetation-eating mammals. And to eat vegetation, you need teeth to grind down that vegetation. And that's what the wisdom teeth are for. But we eat vegetables, sure, but now we're omnivores, and we don't need to spend a lot of time grinding our food. But we still have those wisdom teeth, and often they're pulled out. We also have the remnants in the corner of our eyes of a third eyelid. So our ancestor would have had a third eyelid to be able to look around and still protect its eye. And many animals today have a third eyelid. And there are other ones as well, extrinsic ear muscles. Our ancestor would have moved its ears around to see where predators were. Well, some people these days can still use those extrinsic ear muscles. We are primates. Even Johnny Depp, we're all primates. We belong in the primate group of chordates. We're a vertebrate. We're a mammal. So we have mammary glands as a mammal. And we have other features that classify us as primates. So our earliest primate ancestors were very small. They might not have been primates. They were a mammal for sure, though. They became arboreal. That means living in the trees. Probably due to safety and food. The adaptations for living in the trees are such things as a mobile shoulder to be able to swing through trees and reach in many directions. The thumbs became opposable. The thumbs encircle branches. They're prehensile. They also allow us to make tools, of course. Forward-facing eyes is a feature that helps with depth perception. So the ability to judge distances accurately for catching prey, for example. Many animals that are prey have eyes at the side because they need to have good peripheral vision to see predators. However, predators tend to have binocular vision for distance. We have color vision to distinguish fruit, for example. That would have been an adaptive trait for an ancestor. Also, the primates have a larger brain and a good memory to remember food sources. So these are things that distinguished primates from other organisms. So here's an ancestor, not an ancestor, sorry, this is a primate, a current primate, a chimpanzee, and we are related to chimpanzees. We have a lot of the similar traits. One very important evolutionary trend was to walk upright. So other primates that are part of our group of primates don't walk upright. That is a human feature. It's thought that because the forest became grassland, that being able to walk on two legs helped to see predators in the distance. You could walk and carry food or infants. And we can see the adaptations for bipedalism in our own bodies, such as our pelvis is tilted forward, our femur is large and mobile, our knee allows a hinge joint for walking, our great toe and arch give us balance, our skull has a hole in the bottom for our spinal cord. We have vertebrae that are articulated in such a way for walking. These are all adaptations for bipedalism, walking upright. Are they perfect? No, they're not perfect. If they were, we wouldn't get back problems and we wouldn't get knee problems, but we do, particularly as we get older. Some of the other hominid or human species in our past has been Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, and Homo sapiens, that's us. So there are two Homo sapiens that we know of. I think there are three now, but two of them anyway are Neanderthal and Cro-Magnon. So both considered subspecies of Homo sapiens. So if we were to go into like evolutionary medicine, for example, we would be looking at diseases that can be traced to our evolutionary past in environments that may not exist today. And there's many different ways in which we can tell what our ancestry would have been like due to who we're more closely related to now. So DNA hybridization is a method by which you can tell how much DNA is similar between different species. We are approximately 1.6% different from chimpanzees, and our adaptive features are very much the same. You and I are related by our differences are about 0.1% between humans. So these evolutionary relationships help us to choose animals for biomedical research. So the more closely related animals are to humans, the more likely it is that medicines will work for humans as well. Indeed, some animals are physiologically so close that unfortunately viruses do tend to be able to jump from animals to humans. That's the case with the COVID virus, of course, and other viruses such as Ebola. And rats and mice are used extensively because they're mammals and they have a close relatedness to humans. If you were to look at our primate phylogeny, we're looking at, in this case, all current, except for Australopithecines. They're extinct now, but these are all current existing species. And we can tell by comparing our DNA how closely related we are. So it turns out that the bonobo, which is a kind of like a chimpanzee recently discovered in the Congo, is the most closely related to Homo sapiens, that's us. And the Australopithecines were also very closely related. And when you look at a phylogeny like this, and you see where the branches are, there's a branch here, that would have been the relative, the ancestor of both Australopithecines and Homo sapiens, but we diverged into different species. If you go further back, this branch point would have been the ancestor of the bonobo and Homo sapiens. We don't know exactly what that ancestor looked like. However, we know must have had many of the same features because we are so closely related. That's that's where I'm going to end. I won't go into this lecture now. I'll stop this so that it's relatively short, and I'll start the other one in a moment. Thank you for watching.